I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when the call came through from my commanding officer. His tone was grim. "Merrick's been arrested. There was a serious incident at Arden's wedding. You need to get home immediately." The news hit me like a thunderbolt. Merrick, my 16-year-old son, gentle, kind, someone who hated causing pain, was facing felony assault charges. He'd attacked Arden's new wife on the day of their wedding. I hadn't seen him or my younger son, Darian, in nearly 8 months. Now, suddenly, my whole world shifted. The flight home was a blur of restless hours and spinning thoughts. When I finally landed in Dallas, I drove straight to Arden's house, dreading the scene that awaited me. The driveway was stained with dark smudges of blood, an ugly reminder of what had happened. Arden opened the door with a face full of anger. "We're pressing charges," he said harshly, blocking my way inside. But I pushed past without hesitation. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Arden's parents sat rigidly on the couch, the weight of disapproval written on their faces. Toran, Arden's brother, was by the window, arms crossed, while Leora, his sister, sat quietly in the corner. Jessica, Arden's new bride, was at the center, her face swollen, nose splintered, and eyes brimming with tears. There, amidst the storm, sat Merrick, his knuckles bruised and swollen, but his posture proud, chin raised. His eyes locked onto mine, fearless and full of unspoken defiance. No one could see then what I was starting to realize: there was a far darker story beneath all this anger. Whatever had happened in that house, Merrick wasn't the villain everyone believed. I took a steadying breath. I needed to hear everything, from him, no one else. Walking into Arden's house was like stepping into a courtroom full of accusations. Arden's parents sat stiffly on the couch, their faces hard with anger and disappointment. Toran stood near the window, arms crossed tightly, glancing nervously around the room. Leora, his sister, appeared uneasy, avoiding eye contact and sitting quietly in the corner. Jessica, Arden's new wife, was at the center of attention. Her face was bruised with dark purples and reds, one eye nearly swollen shut, a splint on her nose. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she dabbed at him, trying to keep her composure. Arden's voice was cold and sharp. "Merrick destroyed everything. Look what he did to her." His words stung the air, heavy with accusation and rage. Jessica's sobs grew louder, and her mother stepped forward protectively. Arden's father shook his head in disgust and muttered, "He should be tried as an adult. That boy is a menace." All eyes locked onto Merrick, who sat tall and silent, defiant and proud despite the crowd pressing down on him. His hands were bruised and swollen, but he didn't flinch. His chin was raised as he met my gaze. The room exploded with blame, anger, and fear. But I forced myself to cut through the noise. "I'm not taking sides yet. Merrick, I want to hear your truth. Tell us what happened." Silence fell. Every head turned to my son. Slowly, Merrick looked around the room, seeing every face, their hatred, their fear, their disbelief. Then he spoke clearly, his voice steady and sure. "You want to know the truth?" This was more than just a courtroom. It was the battleground for the truth that had been buried too long. The room held its breath as Merrick's voice broke through the tension. "Jessica has been hurting me for 6 months," he said plainly. "She's been molesting me." The reaction was instantaneous and fierce. Jessica's mother erupted in angry screams, calling him a liar and shaking her finger. Arden's father looked pale, as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Grandpa scowled, shouting, "How dare you accuse her of such a thing?" Jessica's sobs grew louder, her face twisted with despair and fury. But Merrick didn't back down. He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling but steady, and opened a hidden album. The room gasped at the photos, damning proof that no one could easily dismiss. Jessica lunged at the phone, desperate to snatch it away. But in her frantic attempt, she stopped abruptly and the faintest flicker of admission crossed her face. The photographs could no longer be denied. My heart pounded as I realized how deep the nightmare ran. This was more than a single moment of violence. This was a betrayal from someone trusted, something no one had wanted to see. Arden's family sat frozen, the lies crumbling around them. The accusations, denials, and disbelief shifted silently toward the undeniable truth held in Merrick's hands. Yet, even with proof, the pain of betrayal was only beginning to sink in. I wanted to wrap my arms around my son, to promise him protection. But the fight had just started, and it was going to be long and brutal. Jessica's family reaction was violent, defensive, and desperate to hold on to their beliefs. Her mother screamed at Merrick, calling him a liar and a wicked child. "How could you make such accusations? She's a good woman," she insisted loudly, eyes wild with anger. Arden glared, pacing the room as if trying to lose his own disbelief in the accusations. Torin, Arden's brother, spoke quietly but firmly, "Ethan, just apologize. Let's put this behind us." But Merrick, steady and resolute, shook his head. "I told you 3 months ago. You laughed it off, said she was just affectionate. Grandpa said I was overreacting. Leora told me not to be dramatic. Torin, you joked, said I should be grateful." Their faces fell. The weight of their dismissals surfaced as guilt and regret. Merrick had been crying out for help, but the adults had chosen silence. Arden's father quietly muttered, "Not again." She promised she changed after therapy, but the unspoken history hung heavily in the air. The house felt like it was collapsing under the weight of years of lies. The family wasn't just breaking apart, they were finally revealing the cracks that had always been there. Merrick's tears came, ugly and raw. Then he said, voice breaking, "That's not why I hit her." All eyes fixed on him, waiting for the truth to unravel what had held them captive for so long. Merrick's voice trembled but rang clear. "It wasn't just because of what Jessica did to me. Last week, I saw her sneaking out of Darian's room at 2 a.m. He glanced at Darian, who nervously pulled up his pajama shorts, revealing bruises on his thighs. Silence fell, thick and heavy. Jessica's carefully crafted mask slipped for a moment, her face twisting with contempt. Then she lashed out, shrieking, "That brat came on to me." Arden spun toward her, furious. "What did you just say?" For the first time, fear flickered across Jessica's face. Darian hugged Merrick tightly, tears streaming down his face. Merrick fought back his own sobs. "The morning of the wedding, I begged Dad to believe me. He said not today." Merrick's hand shook as he wiped his tears away. "I couldn't stop her, so I stopped her the only way I knew." Jessica's mother screamed, "You promised therapy. You said this would never happen again." The word "again" hung ominously, an ugly secret no one wanted to speak aloud. Merrick continued, "We were just kids, but every adult here chose her over us." The room froze, the weight of that truth settling in. I felt my heart shatter. This was no longer a story about a single moment of violence but about the failure of every adult to protect 2 innocent boys. Their silence, their disbelief, had allowed the nightmare to go on far too long. Justice had to come, not just for Merrick, but for Darian, and for every child silenced by fear and doubt. The moment I called 911, everything spiraled. Jessica locked herself in the bathroom, and in those 10 minutes, she planted false evidence on her phone. The police arrived swiftly and took Jessica into custody, but then unexpected trouble began for me. Screenshots appeared, seemingly showing messages from me giving Jessica permission to discipline Merrick however she saw fit, even to the point of inappropriate contact. The messages were damning, though I had never sent them. The police took my phone, photographing and fingerprinting me as a potential accomplice. I felt like I was drowning in a nightmare, trapped by the lies of a predator planning to drag me down. A detective led me to a cold interrogation room, sliding a folder across the table filled with these fake messages. I demanded to see my phone records to prove my innocence. The detective said they'd keep my phone for forensic analysis, but every question felt like a trap designed to break me down. Meanwhile, Sarah Mercer, the attorney my friend recommended, sprang into action. She filed preservation orders with phone companies and tech firms, demanding original records. The team discovered that Jessica had used a spoofing app to fabricate those texts. They dug into her browsing history, uncovering searches for how to fake messages and install spoofing apps. James Hayes from CPS interviewed Merrick and Darian separately, listening carefully as the boys bravely described months of abuse. Medical exams confirmed physical evidence consistent with their disclosures. With each new discovery, the pieces of Jessica's deceit became clearer. But no one warned me just how exhausting and costly this battle would be. The legal work doubled, the emotional toll surged, and the voices outside condemned me without knowing the truth. Yet Sarah vowed to keep fighting so my sons and I would be protected from this web of lies.
The legal battles came fast and hard. Jessica's attorney was aggressive, flooding the court with motions to discredit everything Merrick and Darian had revealed. They argued that the boys were coached by me, and they fought to throw out the photo evidence as illegally obtained. The courtroom felt like a war zone. Meanwhile, Sarah Mercer, our sharp and relentless attorney, dug deep. She exposed Jessica's fake texts by subpoenaing phone records and tech forensic reports. Expert Mark Frost analyzed the metadata, proving the messages were spoofed and the audio threats fabricated. The truth was starting to pierce through the wall of lies. James Hayes from CPS stood by the boys, ensuring their voices were heard in interviews and medical exams. The results confirmed physical evidence consistent with abuse. The detectives' investigation backed our case, but the cost, financial and emotional, was mounting. Courtrooms, depositions, therapy appointments, it never ended.
Jessica's family tried to settle quietly, offering hush money with strict NDAs. But Merrick and Darian wanted justice, not silence bought with money. Sarah refused the deals, standing firm for the boys. The judge ordered Arden to attend mandatory parenting classes after being found guilty of failing to protect his children. Jessica faced mounting charges with additional victims coming forward. While the battle tested every nerve, Merrick was offered a diversion program. If he completed therapy and community service, he could avoid juvenile detention. He nodded silently, tired but determined. The fight was far from over, but every day the lies unraveled a little more. I clung to hope. Justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about protecting two boys who had already suffered far too much. After the initial shock and legal chaos, Child Protective Services became deeply involved to safeguard Merrick and Darian. James Hayes, a compassionate and thorough CPS caseworker, took charge of the investigation. He interviewed both boys separately, creating a safe environment where they could tell their story without fear or pressure. Each child recounted the months of abuse with painful clarity. Merrick spoke about the nights Jessica crept into his room, and Darian, still trembling, revealed the bruises he hid beneath his pajamas. James documented every detail meticulously and arranged for comprehensive medical exams at Children's Medical Center Dallas. The medical reports confirmed signs of trauma consistent with the abuse the boys described. Due to the severity of the findings, CPS implemented a safety plan limiting visitation rights. Merrick and Darian could only see family under supervision to prevent any further harm. Though humiliating and difficult, I agreed to these strict conditions because my priority was their safety and healing. The boys started therapy sessions with specialists trained to help young survivors of abuse. Progress was slow. Sometimes they spoke, other times they retreated into silence or drew pictures to express their pain. Yet, each small step was a victory. School officials alerted me to clear changes in Darian's behavior and grades, declines dating back to when Jessica moved in, changes previously overlooked. The trauma had affected every part of their young lives. Outside the court battles, I faced a relentless tide of harassment online. Private details leaked, threatening messages flooded my phones, and strangers took pictures of the friend's house where we sought refuge. Sarah Mercer helped install security cameras and arranged private security patrols, dosed with fear but shielded by support. Through it all, CPS worked tirelessly to find a safe, stable home for Darian, settling on a specialized therapeutic foster family that gave him security and love. Merrick began counseling, community service, and slowly reclaiming his sense of self. The courtroom felt like an arena where every fact, every emotion, was stripped bare. Scheduled hearings dragged on as lawyers sparred over evidence and procedures. Jessica's defense launched relentless attacks, seeking to exclude crucial photo evidence and discredit Darian's and Merrick's testimony as coached or manipulated. The motions threatened to delay justice indefinitely.
Yet, Merrick's strength never wavered. After careful negotiation, the judge offered him a juvenile diversion program, an opportunity to avoid the stigma of a criminal record by completing community service, attending regular therapy, and maintaining monthly check-ins with a probation officer. Merrick accepted silently, understanding that this was his chance to rebuild without permanent damage. CPS's detailed investigations, interviews, and medical reports formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Jessica's history of abuse surfaced, with additional victims coming forward. Arden was held accountable for failing to protect his children and ordered into mandatory parenting classes for 6 months. Despite courtroom drama and delays, we began to see the law acknowledging the boys' suffering. The judge's rulings reminded us that true justice was about protection, healing, and accountability. The legal battles were exhausting, the stakes impossibly high. But Merrick and Darian's bravery had shifted the tide. They were no longer silent victims. They were key witnesses in a fight for truth. Through it all, Sarah Mercer stood steadfast, guiding us through the labyrinthine legal system and reminding me that every step forward was a victory. After months of court battles and therapy sessions, Merrick and Darian began to find moments of peace. Merrick started community service at a local animal shelter, the quiet companionship of dogs and cats helping him regain trust and a sense of purpose. It was hard to believe this was the same boy who had been dragged into such a dark place. Darian's nightmares slowly lessened with the loving support of his therapeutic foster family. His foster parents, patient and kind, helped him heal in ways the biological family could not. Therapy sessions continued, sometimes painful, sometimes hopeful, but every small step forward was progress. Arden, Merrick's father, faced his own reckoning. He began attending court-ordered parenting classes, learning to recognize warning signs he had missed, and grappling with guilt for failing to protect his sons. His anger shifted away from them and towards the truth of Jessica's actions. My career suffered. A formal reprimand and administrative hold cast a shadow over years of service. But none of that mattered as much as the safe, healing environment we were building for the boys. Jessica's past therapy records revealed other victims, bolstering the prosecution's case. New charges were filed and the hope of justice grew stronger. Though the future would be challenging, Merrick and Darian were no longer silent victims. They were survivors armed with courage and support. Our lives might never be normal again, but we were moving forward together, healing, fighting for justice, and reclaiming hope. Every night, I thanked them for their bravery and whispered, "We will get through this." You are not alone. You are loved.